Hi, I'm Joe Navarro, and welcome back to People Watching. Today, I'm going to talk about a personality type that I haven't talked about for a very long time. It's often misunderstood. These are individuals that, first and foremost, need a lot of help, professional help, and that is the histrionic personality. Now, the histrionic personality and that disorder is defined in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. But for the average person, what we experience are the behaviors that are associated with these individuals. When I wrote the book, Dangerous Personalities, I had interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people over the years and talked about what it was like to live with individuals who are flawed of character. In the old DSM, they were often referred to as access to cluster B personalities. Now, these are individuals who are experiencing great difficulty psychologically. And what usually ends up happening is we experience that through their behaviors. In my book, Dangerous Personalities, I talked about the emotionally unstable. And I use that term because, as I've often explained, when you're talking to people who lived with the borderline personality or the histrionic personality, they don't know the terms of art. They certainly don't know psychological terms. What they do know is what they're experiencing. And so by talking to them, I was able to discern what it was that they experienced that was so objectionable. And what was objectionable was that they were affected emotionally, mentally, physically sometimes, and certainly financially. These individuals became a burden on them. And most people don't know what these traits are. So I wanted to go through them with you. And again, my emphasis here is these are a small portion of the population. The histrionic personality tends to be very dramatic. They tend to seek to be the center of attention. The way they comport themselves affects others and actually affects them. The pathology itself may keep these individuals from having a fulfilling job, fulfilling life, or fulfilling relationships because it is a malady. And so, with great benevolence, we look at these traits because hopefully we can help them to get some help, which is what they really need, professional psychological help. So some of the features of the histrionic personality, as I said, they tend to want to be the center of attention, but they do it through the dramatic events that they sometimes create, by being loud, by being sometimes obnoxious, by saying things that make other people upset, by saying things that are outrageous, or they tend to be very seductive in the style of talking to others and communicating with others to the point where it becomes, as we now say, highly inappropriate to dress in a certain way and walk in a certain way and just sort of show yourself in a certain way, especially in a business environment. The incessant need of the histrionic personality to be noticed, to be liked, to be appreciated, and to be the center of attention is taxing. And so many times they will escalate their behaviors to the point where they're just absolutely outrageous, where at work they're told, well, you just can't walk around like this, or saying things and expressing yourself in a way that it looks like you're, trying to pick up on other people, or overtly sexual in your behavior. Now, keep in mind that in certain cultures, certain behaviors are more tolerated than in others. So we have to be careful with context, culture, things like that. But what we do know is across the board, the histrionic personality does draw a lot of attention by their behavior. And then the other thing that happens is, unfortunately, is because they're so dramatic that oftentimes they're not married to the truth. And so their perception of reality is quite often skewed. So from talking to psychologists, we know that they tend to invent things or lie or say that this or that happened when in fact it did not. And they do it with such conviction because they're used to being very, very dramatic. Consistent with lying is their use of hyperbole, the use of words, generalities, these gross generalities like, well, everybody hates me, or everybody loves me, or nobody this or nobody that. Saying things that are quite dramatic but not accurate and not in any way truthful. The histrionic personality places a lot of value into how they are dressed and how they are perceived. So there have been circumstances in which they have bankrupted themselves buying clothing, makeup, other things to look a certain way when in fact they could not afford to live in that style. And then the use of all this high-priced clothing and purses and shoes and so forth, they can make these very dramatic entrances, which they often do. But at the same time, it can have devastating effects on their own finances. The other thing that stands out about the histrionic personality is how gullible they are. One of the things that I have noticed in my interview of them and from the research is that their gullibility is extremely high. They seem to be seduced by any number of gurus that are out there, people that are prattling this idea or that idea. They're very impulsive. So they don't take a lot of time to study these things. They're not very introspective. They don't self-analyze, and they lack the ability to really deeply analyze things. And so they're sort of suckers for people that would take advantage of them. And it's very sad to see because predators out there see these types of personalities and find them very easy to sort of get in their mind and take advantage of them. And it's one of the reasons why they desperately need some help. In everyday life, you may find that these individuals may not only be very gullible, but they're very susceptible to the use of alcohol and drugs, and they may be experimenting with these things a lot, much to the detriment of their own body, or they may engage in a lot of sexual activity which may place them in jeopardy in relationships and with health issues. And it's really very unfortunate because oftentimes they will use sex as a way of getting noticed or as a way of being appreciated, when in fact there may be a lack of true love, but they have a hard time detecting that because they're so fixated on themselves that they readily will submit to just anybody that praises them. The histrionic personality is susceptible to anything that is impressionistic, and they tend to sort of jump from one thing to the other very desperately. It seems like at time, 1 minute they're madly in love with this individual, and then the next minute they drop that one individual and they go with somebody else. And it's the dramatic change, their fluidity of being able to go from one person to the other, and then perceiving that person as being so much a part of their life. From talking to the victims, they often talked about how this individual just became really clingy, overly loving, dramatically love bombing them rather suddenly. There was no graduation of experience. It was just all very sudden. It's like they would say things like, well, she looked into my eyes and said that we had been soulmates and that we should immediately go and get married. And, you know, I just met this person. That kind of drama, that kind of impulsivity, the overvaluation of others in very romantic ways is a part of what we see with the histrionic personality. And in a way, it's very sad because these individuals often feel that they have incomplete lives. They feel rather empty. And so very difficult to witness and to deal with. So when you're dealing with these individuals and you notice that they have 6 or 7 of these traits that I've talked about, be thinking about the fact that they're going to be very clingy, very dramatic. They're not going to be married to the truth. They're very impressive in their ability to create drama and so forth. But what they really need is help. And most people are not professionals. And so it's almost impossible to deal with them. But I think it behooves us to understand the pathology and what it looks like. So if you're interested in reading more about the histrionic personality, take a look at my book, Dangerous Personalities, which really explores the full extent of these very dramatic, very interesting individuals, but in many cases they end up in very sad circumstances because their behaviors actually work very much against them. So thank you for joining me. I hope you've learned something. Please share this with others. Be kind to others. And I look forward to seeing you here. Please subscribe, and I thank you.